So, welcome, guys, to another live stream. Of course, as the title suggests, today we'll be talking about the Alexander McQueen Resort 2025 collection. I think it's very interesting. I think with McQueen, it's kind of one of those brands that people hold dear to them. And of course, Sean McGirr, who's the current creative director, this will now be his second main collection at the brand. The first collection, of course, as most of you know, had many mixed reviews. And I genuinely think that in this second collection, there are a lot of improvement, which I'll talk about as this stream goes on. But how's everyone doing? And what did you guys think of the collection? The casting for the Blow biopic is interesting. Emilia Clarke as Daphne Guinness. There's a lot of biopics, even like the McQueen one that's coming out, I guess, soon, should be very interesting. I think that there's been a lot of money recently in telling the stories of a lot of fashion brands, whether we're talking about, the TV show for Balenciaga or the Dior show, or even, things like House of Gucci, all these things. It seems like there's a lot of money for brands these days to tell their stories. We've seen John Galliano release his documentary recently, so it just seems that, in fashion in general, there's a lot of money being pushed into these things. Tuning in from the sauna. Since when did Luke become Micah? The next man says, I wasn't inspired, but he's improving. Carrying needs heaters now, not incremental improvements, though. Interesting. That's an interesting take. Hello, Al. How are you doing, Al? Someone is saying Kerring is probably going to let him go soon. I hope not. Not because I am or I'm not a fan of Sean McGirr. I just think that every designer needs a certain level of give them a chance first. I think that too many brands now have one designer where after one season we never see them again. It's really weird. I don't know what these brands and these companies are expecting. I think that we need to, have a lot more patience, to be honest. I think the patience is definitely lacking these days. So yeah, very, 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 very strange. Duke says good for Acne Studios, not Alexander McQueen. I can get that in a sense. Although I think a lot of times, a lot of people associate Alexander McQueen with like what Lee McQueen did. But if we're talking about, more modern Alexander McQueen and what Sarah Burton was doing, her McQueen was way more commercial. So having like commercial pieces and tailoring is not anti McQueen. Like Sarah Burton did a lot of that. Obviously, it was extremely well tailored, but it was definitely still very commercial. A lot of the stuff that she did at McQueen. Someone said school uniform is a boring reference point. That's funny because that's definitely one of the things that I was going to touch on um, with this collection and kind of the inspirations. We'll just give people a little bit more time and then we're going to jump straight into my thoughts. McQueen's clothes, the non-show pieces were extremely commercial and sellable. Yeah, I mean, certain jackets were certain, like, that's what I mean. I think a lot of people associate McQueen with like this ultra super avant-garde stuff, and anytime something isn't, at least this is the discourse I've seen on like Twitter and stuff, that anytime because the critique for Sean McGirr is like, oh, it's basic, it's basic, it's basic, but it's like a lot of McQueen stuff historically has been very commercial. There's this misconception that like every single thing that has been done at the brand is like some unwearable art which just isn't the case. So yeah, who would have thought I'll be coming to the defense of Sean McGirr? It's not even commercial anymore in the sense that you can still feel the original DNA. You can't differentiate it enough. I mean, I do love some good wide leg pants, but they are the antithesis to McQueen. If I'm being honest, anything will look better next to that first collection. Oof, that's harsh. That's harsh. People don't realize that most of his collections were like 80% tailoring. Interesting takes. Interesting to see what you guys are saying about the collection. So to jump straight into it, I want to make sure that this live stream is not like exceptionally long, like stupidly long. So we're going to jump straight into it. So the location for this, I guess, lookbook, we're going to call it that, was the Hatfield house. Now, this idea of, shooting at the Hatfield house was to do with, Sean McGirr said he has this idea of aristocratic punk that he just sees as very McQueen, and talking about that's who McQueen was surrounded by and referring to Isabella Blow. Now, saying that, and I've seen in a lot of publications, they've gone with this phrase, this idea of like aristocratic punk and just run with it. I don't think that represents McQueen at all. I definitely think it represents Isabella Blow. I think if you think of the life of Isabella Blow and you think of the fact that she was from an aristocratic family, but they didn't have any money, because my understanding is that her grandfather inherited like a lot of wealth, but he just like gambled away a lot of the wealth and spent loads of the money. So by the time Isabella Blow was born, they had started running out of their wealth. So even when you read about Isabella Blow, she knew from a young age that she would actually have to work for her money, because their family wealth was like waning. And so this idea of aristocratic punk is very Isabella Blow, because Isabella Blow, yes, she's an aristocrat, but she also was quite punk in certain regards. Even the idea of like using aristocrat and punk in the same sentence is such a misnomer, right? But I get it. I get what they're going for. I think it makes sense. And I guess a lot of this collection is really just inspired by the life and times of Isabella Blow, someone who's kind of like from an impoverished aristocratic family, which is weird to say, but it's kind of true. Absolute fashion icon, absolute legend, Philip Tracy's muse. Helped the careers of so many models and designers off the top of my head, like Alexandra McQueen, Lee McQueen, obviously, Hussein Chalayan, Julian McDonald. So yeah, and it makes sense to reference Isabella Blow because she's such a key figure when you talk about the history of Alexandra McQueen itself, and the fact that she has a very long time involvement with the brand, especially obviously when she was alive. I think it would have made more sense if, they actually shot this in the Doddington Hall, because the Doddington Hall was the hall that Isabella Blow's grandfather inherited. So that would have been better in terms of referencing if you want to like go with super, super attention to detail. But either way, we get some sort of aristocratic hall that represents a certain aristocracy. I get it. I get the idea of it. And it's kind of like this idea where Sean McGirr said in his interview with Vogue Runway that is this idea of, kids kind of just like playing dress up and running around and having fun. And they're almost like wearing the art in the art gallery, which is cool. It's cool. He even said that the starting point for this collection was looking at school uniforms. And the reason why he looked at school uniforms was because there's a kind of, like in the UK at least, for a long time, the way your school uniform looks is kind of related to social class. So a lot of, private schools or like public schools, but like public schools in terms of historical public schools, I'm talking about like Eton and Rugby and stuff like that. They have very, very specialized and fancy school uniforms. It's kind of like looking at how school uniforms can sort of represent a certain level of aristocracy or like social class. that's a cool idea. I just don't. The way that he used that in the clothes was not really super interesting. I thought he was going to do something way more interesting with that, but that is what it is. Um, so yeah, even like the concept of the shoot goes back to him saying that it's sort of this idea of girls and boys hanging out, wearing each other's clothes. Um, he also um, he also talked about how this collection was unisex, which to me is not that revolutionary. When you make blazers and trousers, inherently they're unisex. So there's nothing really crazy about saying that, blazers and trousers and tailoring and stuff is unisex, but it was something that he mentioned in the interview, which was kind of cool. So now we're actually going to look at the clothes and kind of have a look through and see what was going on there. And this should be a lot of fun going through the looks. Okay, let's have a look. Let's view the slideshow. Luke says unisex collections can choke. Bring back manly man. Definitely trolling. Oh god, that's funny. um So, like I said, school uniforms were a starting point. It's kind of like the connotations of aristocracy. So you have throughout this collection, like this look, for example, these double-breasted jackets, which is like a reference to school uniforms and kind of like the jackets and the blazers that some people wear in schools. Um, Kind of like the interesting shaped trousers, the footwear. Also, a big focus in this collection was the high collars across a lot of the knitwear. There was a big focus on the high collars. I don't know why. I'd love for him to say if there's any specific reason or if he just liked that aesthetically, how it looks. Of course, obviously, there are a lot of old McQueen collections that have high collars. So, my first thought when I saw it was harkening back to a few Alexander McQueen collections. Um, but it could be that, or it could be something else, to be honest. Um, but anyway, moving on. So here we have a print. It's so before I even talk about the print, actually, and the artwork. So in the Vogue runway interview, they're talking about how Sean McGirr is an art lover who, travels to New York, goes to loads of galleries, and likes to spend his time just looking at different artwork across New York, um, which is cool, I guess. You can also draw a lot of parallels to that in terms of Alexander, like Lee McQueen himself. He's someone that obviously used to go to a lot of art galleries, is very, very educated on art history, visiting so many museums, is very, very curious person. So I can definitely see how they're drawing the parallels there. Um, and so in this idea of, having men and women just kind of wearing each other's clothes and having a fun time and doing all of that, there's kind of like this other idea of also channeling his own experience, and this idea that he visits an art gallery and he wanted this idea to have this sort of air of, oh, the kids are wearing the artwork that they're seeing in the gallery. Like they're going to an art gallery, they see the artwork, and then all of a sudden they're wearing it, which nah, not really that interesting of an idea, to be honest. I like the parallels in terms of drawing the parallels between um Sean McGirr and Lee McQueen himself. But yeah, I don't know. There's more interesting ways that you can present that, in my opinion. And so a lot of the artwork that was turned into a print in this collection is Portrait of Pope Innocent X, which is by Velasquez, who obviously is a famous piece of artwork. Um, it's also it draws parallels to a lot of, like, even not even just clothing, actually. A lot of campaigns, and one day I'm actually going to make a video about this. A lot of old McQueen campaigns, and when I was at CSM, we did lectures on this, have very, very deep art history references, even down to like where certain things are placed, where a lot of people actually wouldn't notice. like things are placed certain ways and in certain places in certain campaigns, and they're like an ode to different artworks and art periods and stuff. So Sean McGirr is definitely referencing that. I just think that when you're referencing artwork, especially at a house like McQueen, there has to be, you have to say more than just people wearing the artwork that they see in a gallery, or just kind of just openly printing it on a garment. There has to be like a deeper reason or a better reasoning as to why you've picked that artwork, and there has to also be a better way that you're using the artwork on the clothing. That's my personal opinion. So while I like the parallels between Sean McGirr and Lee McQueen, I also like the fact that he's using, artwork. I just think that there has to be, you have to be saying more with the way that you're using the artwork, in my personal opinion. Here's an ode once again to just like the McQueen tailoring. This T-bar idea is kind of like being used in a lot of the bags too, even down to like the buckles and stuff like that. Obviously this is a more commercial look. Also, it's a resort collection, lest we forget. So it's going to be more commercial anyway. A lot of the pieces will be very, very commercial. But anyway, going on, someone said it reminds them of a principal uniform. That's crazy. So here, once again, we have the artwork. And now you guys will see what I'm saying. Like, there has to be more that's being said rather than just having different iterations of, printing the artwork. I don't know. I just think there's more that can be said rather than just being like, oh, there's this really, really nice piece of art that I love that's obviously really famous. And one of the most famous portraits, the portrait of Pope Innocent X or Innocent X by Diego Velázquez, that is really cool. And I saw it in an art gallery somewhere. And it's this idea of kids playing together in an art gallery, and they're kind of wearing the art. It's like wearable art. There has to be more that you're saying. There just has to be more that you're saying. There has to be. Luke says Lee McQueen was a massive fan of Flemish and pre-Raphaelite painters. The Velasquez is so random. I don't know why. I just, benefit of a doubt, I just believe that Sean McGirr, maybe there was a deeper reason why he picked that artwork. It just wasn't represented, or they didn't write about it in Vogue. And Vogue, in this case, is the only real proper source to get his direct quotes on this collection, because they are the only ones that really did an interview. So I don't know why, if that was the case, they didn't focus on that and touch on that. So we'll never know, I guess. AD says, oh, this is a fun topic. I have several of the knits from the past season, and I really enjoy the more sculptural, interesting knits. It's funny you say that, because in Sean McGirr's debut collection at McQueen, I actually didn't like the cable knits. I thought the cable knits was a big section of the collection that kind of brought it down, because it just, the knitwear looked really unrefined. So yeah, I wasn't the biggest fan of it, to be honest. And then here we have these kind of like, we've got some more footwear. I will say though that at McQueen, this like boxy shape of footwear is really strong. I really want to see if the McQueen footwear under Sean McGirr is going to catch on, but I do like a lot of the footwear that they do. These kind of like square toe boots, square toe loafers, like all those kind of shapes. I do love that. So that's always cool. These coats with kind of like the fur. There are many pieces across this collection. Also across this collection, there was this focus on these huge collars. I saw someone online say that it would be, I think it was Hanan actually, I Deserve Couture, who said that it would be great to see these collars become like a Sean McGirr McQueen staple, so that he starts to have signifiers and things that we can hearken to when we think of Sean McGirr McQueen. So there are those nuggets. I think another thing that Sean McGirr has kind of made his own, and I actually do like these, by the way, is the bird tail back jackets, the ones that kind of flare outwards at the waist. I'm a big fan of those, and I like those in the first collection. Those were the pieces that I liked from the first collection, amongst a few other pieces too. So I feel like he's starting to have his own little codes at McQueen that we can kind of see from a distance and be like, oh, that's Sean McGirr McQueen, because it's quite distinguishable. Here, once again, we have the high collars and knitwear. I think that the use of knitwear in this collection is way, 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 way better than the first collection. Because the first collection, they had those cable knits. For guys that remember, they just looked like caricatures. I don't even know any other way to put it. It just looked like costume. It just doesn't look like anything anyone would ever wear, even people that like things that are really avant-garde. It didn't really look refined. Like I'm just the reason why I remember, because I was at the runway show when I was looking at those knitwear pieces, like the cable knits especially. I was just thinking to myself, if Lee McQueen designed this, how would it look? And the more I thought about it, the more I started to dislike it, because I know that if Lee McQueen did it, it would be way more refined. It would be, the shape would be more flattering. The funnel neck would not be so humongous. It would actually make sense. It would be very chic. And I think the use of the knitwear in this collection, very, very strong. I did like all the high collar stuff. I did like it. Okay, so here we are when I was talking about this kind of like Sean McGirr bird tail sort of thing that's been going on, these jackets. And they have different iterations. So these are the more simple ones. And then they have the ones that have like 4 different panels that I find even more interesting. So they're kind of cool. You've got a denim look. Once again, we've got sort of these look like brogues, but really, really square toe brogues. I do like the McQueen footwear, as I've said before. I think that the footwear is really strong. I hope it catches on. Greenhead says, I like the knitwear last show, but they did look costumish. It looked like a student project. Yeah, I mean, there just wasn't a refinement that you would associate with a brand that has the resources of a McQueen that's under a conglomerate like Kering, right? The reason why you look at certain things and you're like, oh, that looks like an art student project, is because a lot of students have ideas, but they're not refined, which is completely fine because they don't have the resources and they're just learning. It's why they're students. But when you're at the level of a McQueen creative director, you have the resources to spend millions on a collection. There's just no excuse, in my opinion, personally. Which is why I'm always going to be harsher on creative directors at big brands than creative directors, trying to run their own independent brands and they don't have, a massive, massive budget. This is something talking about the footwear once again, these kind of like heels with the spikes, I think could definitely catch on. So yeah, across the board, I just think that the footwear is sensational. Moving on here, this definitely looks like a school uniform blazer. Obviously, they're double-breasted, and this was a big focus. Someone said earlier, actually, that the idea of school uniforms is a bit, what was the word that the person used? Like, not boring, but uninteresting. I feel like uninteresting is a better way of saying boring. Um, but yeah, it's just not very deep. I think my issue, so I don't have an issue with Sean McGirr, by the way. I think Sean McGirr is a nice person, like personally. Um, I don't per se think he's a bad designer. I just think that McQueen is deep. Like McQueen is all about being deep, and it's also all about tailoring. And it's just like, if you're going to reference school uniforms, there has to be something deeper to say than, oh, there's aristocratic associations and kind of tying that into Isabella Blow. There just has to be more that you're saying through your clothes than that. There just has to be more that you're trying to say. And that's my issue with it. Not necessarily even because a lot of this collection, to be honest, I would wear. I think a lot of this collection is desirable to wear. At the end of the day, a double-breasted jacket is a double-breasted jacket, and if it looks nice, I like the shoulders. It's cool, but we're talking about Alexander McQueen here. Alexander McQueen is a designer that I put in the realm of one of the best designers of all time. Actually, in Discord, for the guys in Discord, and Luke would remember this, we were kind of talking about who we put in our S tier of designers, and we had a long ass debate at like 5 a.m. in the morning talking about which designers could possibly make it to the S tier, and McQueen was easily sitting in the S tier. And I will make a designer tier list video at some point, and it'll have so many designers, like loads. So it's going to take me time to do that, but that should be a lot of fun. But I'm just saying all of this to say that we hold Alexander McQueen in such high regard, and if you're going to design at this house, you just have to be saying more than what Sean McGirr is saying. On the positive note, though, what I will say is that I definitely believe that the ideas and how that was translated into clothing is definitely a lot better in this collection in terms of the aristocracy, the building where it's shot, the posing, the school uniforms. You can see it in the clothes, and you can see it in the image backdrop. Whereas in the first collection, there was a huge disconnect between this kind of animalic sort of youth quake and youth energy from London that I just didn't see from the collection. So I definitely think that it's a lot closer. Here, once again, we see the collars. We see once again the buckle, this kind of like exaggerated T-bar buckle being incorporated into the McQueen version of fisherman sandals. That's really cool. This is giving Gucci Alessandro Michele. I don't know why. I just see it looks like that. Or like Chloe. This could quite easily be Alessandro Michele or Gucci, or it could be a Chloe piece. Either or. Al says, not very deep is what I was thinking. Was hoping there'll be more of an exploration of this term he's coined as a deliberate paradox to look at identity and class, even between Lee and himself. 100%. 100%. And it's even like going back to kind of like the phrase that they're using to encapsulate this collection, this punkish aristocrat, which, like I've said before, is a misnomer. It only works for Isabella Blow and no one else, because aristocrats, or just in general rich people, it's very hard for someone like that to be punk or to represent anything to do with punk. Like, you have people like, I don't know, Boris Johnson, who is horribly behaved and goes, when he was younger, apparently when he was in Oxford, he would like he'll be drunk and he would like trash pubs and stuff and smash cups and bottles. And then when they would like report him to the police or he would get fined, he would just always call his parents and then they would always sort things out, and he never got into trouble. So there's nothing really punk about being like that. Like, every tiny thing you're just going to call your parents to fix things. Like, it's so far removed from punk. So I think if you're going to have this catchphrase, punkish aristocrat, there has to be a deeper social commentary you're making about it. There just has to be. There has to be. This piece I really did like. I did like the look. In terms of tailoring, once again, the footwear, the boxy footwear, big fan of that. The knitwear with the super high collars, big fan of that. And also, I can imagine you can style it in different ways, because you could probably fold it down and make your own collar too, which would be cool. It'll be cool when when people start wearing these, to see how people style them. I really like this look. Very, very classic, but very nice. Here, once again, we have the Sean McGirr signatures with the silhouette of the jacket. We've got the high collar knitwear once again. We've also got some really nice boots. This was a cool look. This was the worst look in the collection, hands down, in my opinion. McQueen is a house about tailoring. The sweatpants have nothing interesting to the shape, is basically my point. The slippers, I'm not really too mad at that. Like, it's kind of like a commercial piece. I get it. It's a resort collection. I'm not too mad at that. The top reminds me of Miu Miu. The top could easily be Miu Miu, to be honest. But the sweatpants are beyond me because a house that's all about tailoring, and I'm looking at those sweatpants, and there's absolutely nothing remotely interesting about the shape, the silhouette at all, not even slightly. So this was definitely the worst look in the collection, but that doesn't really say a lot because, like I said, I did like a lot of the collection. I think while I'm still going through, I will tell you my verdict now. My overall verdict is that the collection is nice. I would wear most of it. Most of it is very desirable. A lot of it is, especially the footwear, is really great. My issue is just that it's cool. If like the problem is like you could design this collection at so many other brands for starters, which makes it seem quite just not special in any way. Also, I just want Sean McGirr to look at McQueen deeper. I don't know Sean McGirr personally. I've never met him. I'm sure he's a great guy, but every time and this is now the second collection I'm looking at from McQueen, I think that he has a very, maybe, let me not say surface level of McQueen, but like he's not channeling the true essence of what the House of Alexander McQueen is. I think he's looking at things, or his references to McQueen are so basic, for lack of a better term, too on the nose, too obvious. Like McQueen is deep. He's such a deep person. He's so well versed in art history and fashion history. Like we should be seeing him delving, like what we were talking about earlier with the social commentaries on, you know, like deeper things on like how class affects aristocracy and like how that affects the school uniforms, and actually look at specific school uniforms and how they differ across history in the UK. Like you should be really delving deep with these things. So I think I don't necessarily think he's a bad designer by any stretch of the imagination, even though I'm sure a lot of people just wanted me to come on here and like bash him and just say that he's a terrible designer. I don't think he's a terrible designer in the sense of like the clothing itself. I just think that for McQueen, for the House of McQueen, I don't think that he's shown any level of narrative through his clothes, or any like deeper understanding of like telling a story through his clothes, other than just like, you know, cool clothing that's really wearable, and like some of it is good commercially. Here we've got the Moo Moo top again, T-bar, footwear looking great once again. A lot of people like this coat. It's nice, it's cool. It kind of looks like it's shaped slightly like a Bottega coat, to be honest, especially with the shoulders. It really does remind me of Bottega. Um, the white trousers are cool. The footwear is great. But once I feel like once you get to this point in the collection, a lot of the pieces are kind of similar. This check top, honestly, if I didn't know that this was a McQueen collection, I would think it's Burberry, because Daniel Lee has been pushing that kind of that kind of check kind of thing. Obviously, it's on brand for McQueen. McQueen, obviously, the Scottish references and using a lot of tartan and stuff. Like it's on brand. It's just it reminds me of current Burberry right now. Someone said Gareth Pugh is still around. The bigger question, because I remember before Sean McGirr was announced, I said that Gareth Pugh would be a very good person to take over at McQueen, but I'm not behind the scenes, so I don't even know if Gareth Pugh would want to do it, to be honest. Um, so yeah. Duke says that skirt makes her tummy look behead. Oh my god, that's crazy. That's insane. Here we've got another focus on the collars. Every time I see gold now, it just reminds me of Demna Vesalia Balenciaga foil. But fair enough, we've got those boxy shoes in different colors. It's kind of like good merchandising in a way. Um, but yeah, overall, cool collection. I think a lot of it is very wearable. I think a lot of it is cool to wear. I did love the footwear. Oh my god, those sweatpants are a big no. like put them in the bin. Um, but yeah, a lot of the looks, I did love this look, for example, super, super embellished. Um, so yeah, it was cool. I know a lot of people probably wanted me to like bash it, and I've kind of given my thoughts on like where I think that this Sean McGirr chapter of Alexander McQueen can improve. I just think that there's deeper things to say with your clothing. There's you should be able to delve deeper. Um, so yeah, but that's the last look. So what's the verdict from you guys? What do you guys think about the collection overall? Now that you've seen it with me talking through it. The Nectar man is being told off by Streamlabs. Please refrain from using foul language. By the way, if you guys use a swear word, don't worry. I'm still setting up my bot. So it thinks the F word is like not allowed in this stream when it is. So take it with a grain of salt. My bot is still learning. It's still learning. Someone is saying the grey coat looks nice. Um, and also, so something I wanted to say before I actually end the stream is because of the fact that this collection, like I said earlier, it could be at many different brands, it made me really ask the question, and I want you guys to say what you think. I'm curious to know what you guys think. Who is Sean McGirr's Alexander McQueen for? Like, who is the customer? Who is the person that is interested in it? Who is the person that is the perfect buying profile for the Sean McGirr, Alexander McQueen? Like, who exactly is this customer? Leah says, no, I think this collection doesn't deserve bashing. It feels like a stepping stone for the signifiers. I just think some pieces needed reworking for different seasons later down the line. Interesting. Aristocratic punks and his friends from uni, obviously. This is a good point also. Why use the Pope just as an abstract print and then not go further? And that's my issue, I guess, like the lack of any sort of narrative, really. It's too on the nose. It's too I just have really high expectations for creative directors that have loads of resources at these big brands. Like, I don't think it's enough personally as a designer. Um if you want to go into like narrative based clothing, to just be like, this artwork is cool. And Lee McQueen was inspired by artwork and used to go to galleries and exhibitions. And I go to galleries and exhibitions. So here's some cool artwork into a print. Or, to talk about this punk aristocrat and talk about Isabella Blow, which does make sense in the case of Isabella Blow, but then to have delve deeper and to not delve deeper, sorry, and not really talk about, you know, class divides with different school uniforms and how that represents modern day culture and how that manifests itself, for example, in a place like London and the different school uniforms based on social class. Like, there just needs to be the attention to detail and the delving deeper that I think that's what's missing. And I genuinely think that if Sean McGirr hits that, he's onto a winner. I think he's starting to find himself. Like I said, he has the signifiers. Um, I do think he's starting to find himself. He's starting to have his, T-bar buckles and all these things that we are starting to be like, oh, that's the Sean McGirr McQueen code. I just think there's just something missing. Well, a few things missing actually. It just needs a bit more of those things. Elle says, I feel like next year he'll really be saying something. I hope so. I think it will come. He really needs a little time to get into the heart of McQueen. I want to see if that crap listed on the website will be selling. It really, really is that bad. Damn. Um, I do also think, fashion history wise, it probably is difficult for designers because I can imagine if you're a designer, most of your time is spent designing. Whereas for me, as a journalist and someone that studied journalism at school, I did whole lectures on McQueen's work. We read whole books on Alexander McQueen. We delve deep. We've interviewed people that are close to McQueen. I know people that are close to McQueen. Like my lecturer was friends with McQueen. So when I say that there's a lack of like, there's only, it seems like there's like this surface level understanding of what McQueen is or stands for, what, his work represents. It just seems like Sean McGirr obviously was inspired by McQueen because I guess who isn't, especially if you're a UK based designer, and kind of had seen McQueen collections that he liked before and is kind of inspired by that. But I think Sean definitely needs to take time out and really, 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 really like delve deep into, you know, everything about McQueen, really just deep dive, like fashion nerd like me in school, like reading a book about McQueen a week type of deep dive. Like that is what I think Sean McGirr needs to really just understand the ethos of the brand and really be able to represent that. Because I think the difference between him and anyone else that has been at the brand is everyone has a direct connection to Lee McQueen, because it was Lee McQueen and then there was Sarah Burton, who was Lee McQueen's right hand for loads of years. So Sarah Burton didn't need to learn that. Sarah Burton was there. So I think with Sean McGirr, there's a disconnect and it's quite obvious. You can see it. And I just think there needs to be, there needs to be a deep dive. There needs to be the research. The research isn't there. The research is lacking. The research is missing. Leo says, plot twist, McGirr has never seen McQueen's work prior to applying for the job. He's actually a Demna fan. You're definitely trolling. He's obviously seen a lot of McQueen's work. Duke says, have you gotten emotional from a younger designer's collection recently? Mm, I don't know. I don't want to say that a lot of because I'm a big fan of, ushering in this sort of new generation of designers that are, going to take over and the changing of the guard and blah, blah, blah. I'm a big fan of that because I think that fashion needs to evolve and we can't just have the old guard, as great as they are. As great as, the John Gallianos and the Rei Kawakubos and the Yohji Yamamotos, like, we also need to focus on young designers and give them a platform. But I just think that a lot of young designers these days, it seems like they just don't, they're not very deep. Not that you have to be deep, but if you're not deep, there has to be something else that you do that's significant. So if you're not like a deep designer in terms of narrative, like let's say Phoebe Philo is not super deep in terms of narrative, Phoebe Philo had such good styling that she almost changed the way that women dressed. And that's the case. So when you see designers that, don't have this like deep John Galliano, Lee McQueen narrative to things, they have a way of like, even Demna is good at this, right? Demna has a really, really strong, first of all, his clothing is quite distinctive. Secondly, obviously informed by, being heavily inspired by Martine Rose and Margiela, but he definitely has a very distinctive aesthetic. And I think that Demna very strongly captures the zeitgeist of the youth. But it just seems like when I think of young designers, I'm talking about people like Sabato now or Sean McGirr, like these kind of designers, there's just a huge lack of either being able to capture the zeitgeist or designing something that just looks distinctively unique. They're not very good at that. And then also there's no depth to what they design. So there's nothing that I can really point to where I'm like, it just seems like the younger designers, there's just a lack of a lot of things. Bosco Vinci says Lee McQueen has gone, you need to stop judging the guy based on him. I'm not judging him based on him. I just mentioned Phoebe Philo and Demna. I'm not just talking about Lee McQueen. I'm just talking about, it seems like the young designers that get the chance to be at these houses, there's a lack of something there. I definitely think that there are young designers that have this. I've met them. I mean, when I was in fashion school, I met loads of designers that had super interesting work and it was super unique and stuff I'd never seen before. And the reference points were out of the ordinary and all that stuff. But unfortunately, those aren't the people getting these opportunities, right? So yeah, I don't know. The new guard is just a bit not that great. I think you have to be deep. If you're not deep, then why are you making art? I guess that comes down to the conversation if you think fashion is art, which is a whole can of worms I'm not sure I want to open, to be honest. Couldn't it be the younger designers have less control over their collections and have more pressure to have the business design a product to a big degree? I mean, that could be a part of it, but I just think that that's an aspect of it. Um, yeah, I just think that's an aspect of it because even let's say someone like Demna has openly said, even in an interview that he did with Kathy Horan on YouTube, he was saying how much the merchandisers influence how the clothing looks, but there's still like in Demna's work, there's still like a level of like storytelling and narrative. Just because there are merchandisers that are involved doesn't mean that your collections have to be void of any sort of narrative or storytelling. McGinn needs to go further into what of McQueen makes him feel something and unpack why that is, and unpack it in a McQueen way. So yeah. When you see how people like Galliano were given chance after chance in the beginning and people willing to risk their rep and money on the strength of belief in him. That's true. I mean, like I said, it's definitely a factor. I definitely think that a lot of these designers in the early times had a lot of leeway because the likes of Marc Jacobs and the Tom Fords, they were kind of creating a blueprint that didn't exist. They were designing at brands that barely had any ready to wear before them. And so they couldn't really fail. The only way was up. And then those brands had like insane growth, which these brands are trying to maintain and kind of even increase the growth even more, which I think makes no sense. But conversation for another day. So there's definitely less leeway for designers. There's definitely less stuff. But I genuinely think that like everyone knows that narrative narrative based clothing is still like a thing. Like there's a reason why John Galliano's Margiela Couture collection was one of the most viral collections we've seen in recent times. Like there's a big appetite for narrative based fashion because it's so lacking in this fashion landscape because so many designers can't do it. um so and brands want to have a John Galliano and Margiela moment. It's literally what they want. It's just that the designers, it seems like they don't have the chops to even be able to create that. Um, so if anything, I think that the brands want these designers to really explore those kind of things. I think is that when you buy clothes, it's not the designer's art anymore. It's the wearer's choice of self-expression. The focus isn't on the designer's collection anymore. I think that right now it's very hard to present new ideas and make money out of them. In almost every field because everyone is high on nostalgia. I don't think so. I think there are many new designers that have nothing to do with the past that I think are very interesting and they're capturing um the zeitgeist in many different ways. Seeing the LVMH decline, they are overestimating the trajectory of a lot of these brands. I'm used to what Galliano was doing. I used to watch fashion TV in the 90s. There is give and take with the business in this era of fashion, but ultimately, if your designs are inherently lacking quality or they are in support to a weak narrative, you are poised to fail. Yeah, I think actually designers, and going back to this conversation that I was saying, because someone was saying that I'm trying to hold Sean McGirr to the standard of McQueen, which I'm not doing because I've mentioned so many other designers to make my point that do completely different things. Even designers that don't have a narrative, which is why I brought up Phoebe Philo. If anything, I genuinely think that in a world where Gucci looks like Le Maire, which looks like The Row, which looks like Phoebe Philo, in this kind of fashion climate, if you have anything remotely distinctive, it's going to stand out. Because fashion now is so overly commercial and vapid to the point where anything remotely interesting, going back to Galliano's Margiela collection, it's why it went so viral. So to be honest, I just think that there's an appetite, like from everyone, I think, for a designer that's really going to come in and really have something to say. But it just seems like a lot of designers don't really have a lot to say these days. It just seems like what they have to say is, here's a cool jacket that costs 5,000, buy it. No interesting thing about the shape, no interesting thing about the silhouette, no interesting thing about the fabric, no interesting storytelling. It's just nothing. A whole bunch of nothingness. Culture says, I actually think that conversation is for today. I think so many designers are being asked to increase sales, but you cannot force narrative innovation. It's nurtured from what's really there. Interesting take. Isn't that why Margiela left? Fashion became too much about the pressure to turn a profit. Yes, definitely. Um, the problem with fashion now is that people don't care about clothes; they care about accessories, and the clothes are just there to support the accessories. There's no value in interesting clothes. I think there is a value in interesting clothes, though, because even going to what you're saying, if it's a case that people just care about the accessories and it's all about wearing things to support the accessories, I think that's more of a reason to have interesting clothing, because if no one's going to buy it, at least make the clothing something that people talk about, like the Galliano Margiela show. Just make it something that you know captures the zeitgeist, and then people take that buzz and start buying tabbies. In the case of McQueen, it would be a lot of their amazing footwear that Sean McGirr has been doing at McQueen, or the bags, the eyewear, that sort of stuff. Suburban mums are gonna really get into wide lapel jackets soon. The suburbs are getting coconut peeled. That's funny. The accessory is accessible to the masses compared to the couture, where the creativity lies, which is just for 10-year-old thin old madames in Paris. Yeah, but McQueen doesn't, like, we're talking about ready to wear here. It's still expensive, and even though we say accessories is available to the masses, I think slowly that's becoming less and less true, because nowadays we have accessories and bags especially becoming so expensive that they're actually not even for the masses anymore. They're kind of like pricing themselves out of the market, which is a strategy that I think makes absolutely no sense unless your name is Chanel or Hermes. Any other brand, I don't think it works. What is the current zeitgeist? $200 groceries for the week and $1,000 car payment. Gonna be wearing paper bags at that rate. That's funny. Sean is asking me if I've heard of Song for the Mutes. Yeah, I definitely have heard about Song for the Mutes. I'm not too deeply into it. Like, I don't really know about the brand too deeply, but I know the brand. I know of the brand. I think this McQueen is desperately trying to recapture the McQueen customer, but the younger ones, the wide leg pants, clogs, sweatpants. Interesting take. $5,000 apartment. The current zeitgeist. Oh god. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the McQueen collection. Kind of just wanted to make sure that this doesn't drag on too long so that the people that watch it back can actually watch it back and enjoy it, not have to sift through 5 hours of footage. So thank you everyone for tuning into my McQueen TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed. If you disagree with any of my points, that's great because we don't want to create an echo chamber. So definitely, share your thoughts in the comments after I've ended the live stream. I shall be reading all of your very well considered takes. And on that note, join the Discord if you haven't. We're always chatting about fashion in there. You can find a link to the Discord in the description. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.